Red Creek wasn't much of a town, just a handful of weather-beaten buildings clinging to a strip of cracked dirt road and a sky that never seemed to end. The kind of place where secrets festered in the heat, and everyone's past was an open wound. So when the stagecoach rolled in that afternoon, dust swirling around it like a storm, the townsfolk gathered. Strangers didn't come to Red Creek. Not unless they were running from something. The woman who stepped down wore a plain gray dress, her boots cracked, her hat pulled low to hide her eyes. But it didn't hide the bruise along her jaw or the defiance in her step. Sheriff Cole Maddox watched her from the porch of the sheriff's office, arms crossed, his jaw tight as old leather. He spat into the dust, then said what everyone was already thinking. "She's not welcome here." His voice carried across the street like a gunshot. The woman paused mid-step, one hand clutching her small suitcase, the other trembling just enough to notice. "Is that so?" she asked, her voice steady but low. "Funny, I don't recall asking permission." Cole took a slow step forward, his spurs jingling. "This town remembers what you did, Miss Whitlow. Or do you prefer Annie now? You walked out on your husband and left him to hang when the mine went under. Half the men who died in that collapse worked for him." A murmur ran through the crowd. Faces shifted, eyes narrowed. Annie's throat bobbed. "You think I don't remember? You think I don't live with that every day?" Cole's eyes hardened. "I think you'd best keep on walking before you make more trouble." The silence was sharp enough to cut. Then came the low creak of boots on wood as another man stood from the rail outside the saloon. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who moved like he'd fought too many fights and didn't mind another. His hat shadowed most of his face, but the set of his jaw told enough. "Easy, Sheriff," he said. "You got no call to talk to a lady that way." "Stay out of this, Ryder," Cole growled. "Can't," the cowboy said, stepping off the porch and into the dust. "You see, Sheriff, you just made a mistake. That woman's my new ranch hand." The crowd gasped. Annie's eyes widened. Cole's hand drifted toward his revolver. "You're what?" Ryder leaned against the hitching post, unbothered. "You heard me. She's working for me out at the Mesa Ranch. You got a problem with that, you can ride out and tell me to my face." The sheriff's nostrils flared. "You don't know what you're inviting onto your land." "Maybe not," Ryder said, smiling faintly. "But I know injustice when I see it." The air hung heavy between them, like the moment before lightning strikes. Annie met Ryder's gaze for the first time. There was no pity there, just a quiet steadiness that felt like the first drink of water after a long drought. Cole turned on his heel, boots grinding in the dust. "You'll regret this," he muttered. Ryder tipped his hat. "Wouldn't be the first time." As the sheriff strode away, Annie exhaled shakily. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Maybe I didn't," Ryder replied, glancing toward the horizon where the sun burned low. "But I reckon everyone deserves one more chance." Behind them, the crowd began to disperse, but not before a shadow slipped quietly from the saloon, watching them both with eyes cold as river stones. Red Creek had just gotten interesting again. The Mesa Ranch sat like a scar on the edge of Red Creek, hundreds of acres of dry land and stubborn grass that only survived out of spite. Ryder Kane ran it the same way he lived, quiet, relentless, and mean to quit. When he brought Annie Whitlow home that night, the ranch hands stopped what they were doing. The talk had already spread faster than wildfire. The sheriff's warning, the saloon crowd, the woman with the past nobody wanted back. Ryder showed her the bunkhouse, offered her a plate of stew, and didn't ask questions. She didn't volunteer answers either. For a while, the silence between them was its own uneasy truce. Then, when the lantern light flickered low, she finally said, "You didn't have to lie." "Didn't lie," Ryder said, leaning back in his chair. "I needed help fixing fence lines, and you looked like you needed a place to start over. You don't even know who I am." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I know what it looks like when someone's been kicked too many times and still keeps walking." Annie looked away, jaw tight. "My husband Caleb, he wasn't the man people think he was. That mine, He knew it wasn't safe. But he forced the workers in anyway. When it caved in, he tried to pin it on me. Sheriff Cole helped bury the truth because he was in Caleb's pocket. And when I spoke up, they ran me out. Ryder's expression darkened. And now you're back. I came because I found something. Proof. In his ledgers. I can clear my name, but if Cole finds out, he'll destroy me before I can show anyone. Ryder leaned forward. Then you ain't alone anymore. The words hung between them, heavy as a promise. The next morning, Annie worked the fences alongside the men, quiet but determined. She didn't flinch at blisters or stares. By sundown, even the roughest hands admitted she pulled her weight. But that night, as the sun bled out over the hills, Ryder found a riderless horse near the north pasture, its saddle stained with blood. He knelt, tracing the bullet hole through the leather. Someone was sending a message. When he got back, Annie was gone. He searched the bunkhouse, the barn, everywhere. Nothing. Then, under the flicker of the porch lantern, he saw it, her gray hat hanging on the railing, a single note pinned beneath it. Just one word scrawled in shaky ink, Sheriff. Ryder's fist clenched around the paper. The night wind howled across the plains like a warning. Damn it, Annie, he muttered, mounting his horse. Don't you do this alone. He kicked the horse hard and rode toward town, the moon chasing him like a ghost. The jailhouse light burned through the dark like a blade. Annie stood inside, hands bound, face bruised, but her eyes burned brighter than ever. Sheriff Cole paced in front of her, his badge gleaming. You really thought you could waltz back in here and stir up old ghosts? He hissed. Your husband's gone, your story's dead, and so's your reputation. Annie lifted her chin. You're afraid of what I found. Cole stopped pacing. Afraid? Lady, I own this town. And once I find those papers, I'll make sure you disappear again, permanently. He didn't notice the sound of boots outside until the door burst open. Ryder stormed in, revolver drawn. The deputy barely had time to stand before Ryder's gun barked once, shattering the oil lamp and plunging the room into chaos. Cole dove for cover, cursing. Annie dropped to the floor as Ryder kicked the cell door open. You all right? Better now, she breathed. Come on. They burst through the back, flames licking the walls behind them. The jailhouse burned like a funeral pyre as they rode into the dark. By dawn, they reached the edge of the canyon. Ryder pulled up his horse and turned to her. What's in those ledgers, Annie? She reached into her coat and pulled out a small leather book. Proof that the sheriff's been laundering gold from the mine disaster, hiding the profits in fake claims. Caleb's death wasn't an accident. He was about to expose Cole. Ryder's jaw tightened. Then we take it to the marshal in Dry Bend. He'll make sure this sees daylight. A rifle cracked. Annie screamed as the bullet ripped through the saddle horn. They dove for cover behind a rock outcrop. Cole and two riders thundered into view, guns blazing. Ryder fired back, the canyon echoing with thunder. You ride! He shouted. I'm not leaving you. Do it, damn it! Another shot struck near her boot, showering dirt. She swung into the saddle and spurred the horse down the ravine. Ryder reloaded, grit in his teeth, blood on his sleeve. Cole's men closed in, but Ryder wasn't going down easy. He took 2 shots, both hitting their mark. Cole wheeled his horse, snarling. You're a dead man, Kane! Ryder smirked, even as his last bullet clicked empty. Get in line! A final burst of dust and gunfire swallowed them both. By the time the sun rose over Dry Bend, Annie's horse was limping, and her hands were shaking so bad she could barely hold the reins. Behind her, the canyon was a smear of smoke and memory. She stumbled into the marshal's office, thrusting the ledger onto his desk. Sheriff Cole Maddox, he's been stealing from Red Creek. This proves it. The marshal flipped through the pages, whistling low. Well, I'll be damned. You ride with anyone? Annie's voice cracked. Ryder Kane. He covered my trail. The marshal stood. I'll send riders. We'll find him. But 2 days later, all they found was Ryder's hat by the canyon rim. No body. Just blood in the dirt and boot tracks that vanished into the rocks. Months passed. Red Creek changed. The sheriff was stripped of his badge, tried, and hung by the same rope he'd used on better men. The town quieted. The mine reopened, this time safe, fair, honest. Annie stayed on at the Mesa Ranch. She worked the land, fixed fences, kept to herself. Sometimes, when the wind swept across the fields at dusk, she'd swear she heard spurs jingling, soft laughter carried on the air. One evening, nearly a year later, she was mending a fence line when a familiar shadow appeared by the corral. She froze. The hat. The walk. "Ryder?" she whispered. He leaned against the post, grinning faintly. "Heard you could use another ranch hand." Her breath hitched, eyes wet. "You're supposed to be dead." "Been worse," he said. "Besides, I owed you a sunrise." She laughed, the sound breaking and beautiful. He took off his hat, stepped closer, and for the first time, the weight of the past lifted from the air. "Welcome home, Manny," he said softly. The sky burned gold as the sun dropped behind the mesas, and Red Creek, for the first time in years, finally slept in peace.